Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Texas Tech going on the road playing Utah in what very well might be the best football game we see all Saturday afternoon. And let's just start this episode with a little bit of a hot take. To me, these are the two best teams that we see in the Big 12 in 2025. Now, the national media will tell you it's because of the quarterbacks. And I certainly ain't going to argue with that. Devon Dampier, Utah, Baron Morton at Texas Tech, two of the better quarterbacks, not only in the conference, but in the country. What separates these two teams in the Big 12 is what they have along the lines of scrimmage. Now, you say that for a team like Utah, that's not a massive surprise, right? Kyle Whittingham has built this program along the lines of scrimmage. What makes Texas Tech different, what I think a lot of people are sleeping on about this Texas Tech football team is what they have along the lines of scrimmage. And this is an offensive line that's played very clean football the first three games and a defensive front that I think is extremely good in 2025. Look, we've seen Texas Tech have offenses that can be explosive and put points up on the board. We have not seen a defensive front that looks like what Texas Tech has in 2025. And that's the story that I think a lot of people are missing as we're previewing and predicting this football game. I think there's a lot of assuming that Utah is just going to dominate the lines of scrimmage. I don't think that's true going into this football game. That's not a shot at Utah. That's giving Texas Tech their flowers in terms of how they built this program and how they utilize the transfer portal in the offseason. You're looking at a guy like Lee Hunter, who I think is one of the better interior defensive linemen in the country. David Bailey off the edge, Romello Height off the edge, Jacob Rodriguez at the backer position. This team can stop the run. This team can get after the passer. That's the difference between the Texas Tech team we have in 2025. Now, who's going to win this football game? That's the storyline. That's what we're going to get into before we do. And as always, y'all let her rip in the comment section. There are so many different takes and ways you can think this game plays out. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. And let's start here with what I think is the best matchup that we're going to see, a Texas Tech offense that is averaging 53.5 points per game. That is good for number 2 in the country, going up against a Utah defense that's only allowing 8 points per game throughout the first 3 weeks. That's number 3 in the country. It's an elite offense going up against an elite defense. You look at the key to this matchup here, and I think it's pass protection, right? I think Texas Tech's going to want to test what Utah has on the outside. And what makes Texas Tech difficult to deal with, and it's not only Coy Eakin. It's a ton of different guys that can make plays and be explosive in this passing attack. And when Baron Morton's kept clean, there's not many better quarterbacks in the country. When he's been clean on the season, 76% completion percentage, 10 touchdowns to 1 interception. When he's under pressure, that completion percentage drops to 27%, only 2.9 yards per pass attempt. How well can Texas Tech hold up against the Utah pass rush that is sacking the quarterback 11.7% of the time? That's number 6 in the country. Because I look at it and say, hey, if Texas Tech can keep Baron Morton clean, I think there's an opportunity to put some points up on the board because you got a lot of different guys that can win in a lot of different ways. And that's one of my favorite parts about Texas Tech is they can win yards after the catch. I mean, 1,100 passing yards total, over 650 of those yards have come after the catch. They are phenomenal at creating space for the guys to go make plays. But at the same time, they can push it vertically down the field too. Now, Baron Morton, almost 20% of his throws have gone 20-plus yards, and he's completing nearly 55% of those throws. They can test you vertically. They can test you with their speed and space. They got a lot of different guys that they can spray the football out to. When you're that dynamic and you have that many guys that can be difference makers on the outside, all of a sudden you become really, really hard to deal with. And I know Coy Eakin's the biggest name on Texas Tech as a pass catcher. They got some running backs. They got some tight ends that can do some damage as well. Another sneaky storyline to me is Texas Tech's ability to run the football. And, don't get me wrong, we ain't trying to go on the road and run the football down Utah's throat because that ain't going to happen. Utah's too good in the front seven to just have a ton of success running the football. The reason I bring it up is how well can Texas Tech stay on schedule? How often can Texas Tech avoid being in those third and long situations where the crowd noise starts to become a factor, where you have to hold up in pass protection with the Utah defensive front that's pinning the ears back. Not saying Texas Tech has to run the football for 300 yards in this game, but if you can run the football effectively and keep yourself on schedule, work some play action, take a little bit of the bite away from that Utah defensive line, that's another key that I'm looking at in this game. But you make no mistake about it. How well can Texas Tech hold up in pass protection against a very good Utah defensive line? It's good on good. This offensive line's been damn good for Texas Tech. Utah defensive line's been damn good for Utah. Now you flip the script here and say, can Texas Tech deal with this Utah rushing attack? And this is the storyline that I think a lot of people are probably missing in this game. I think a lot of people are just assuming Utah with this offensive line with Devon Dampier running back going run all over Texas Tech. Look, in years past, that might have been the case. I think even the Utah fans that follow this sport closely know, a little bit of a different Texas Tech front seven. Now, even though you have the players, it is still hard to stop this Utah rushing attack. It starts with Devon Dampier. And it ain't no secret. Utah is going to try to run the football, right? 60% of their offensive snaps have been running the football, and they're averaging 6 yards per carry. That's top 10 in the country. They're going to run the football in a lot of different ways. They're going to give some design runs for Devon Dampier. You're going to see some speed options. You're going to see some read options. You're going to see a couple of different kind of players get in the backfield and carry the football. How well can Texas Tech deal with that? That's the storyline. If you can force Utah to be a little bit behind the chains, what I mean is, hey, can this Texas Tech front seven win on first and second down, stopping the run? Can you force Utah into some of those third and long situations where they have to drop back and throw the football? Because what makes Utah so dangerous, they don't take a lot of negative plays. They're really efficient on first and second down. They're very rarely in third and long situations. They keep that playbook open. If Texas Tech can be a team that challenges Utah running the football, forces Devon Dampier, and I'm not saying Devon Dampier can't drop back and throw the football, because he can, but if you can force him to be a little bit more like that kind of quarterback in this one, that's probably how you slow down this Utah offense. And again, you force Utah in some of those passing situations. You got, Romello Height, David Bailey, they ain't many better edge rushing duos in the country that you see that Texas Tech's trotting out there. Now it's going to be a battle because Utah's offensive line, specifically them tackles, are very, very good too. It's going to be good on good. If you're Texas Tech, stop the run, force Devon Dampier to be an obvious pocket passer. Now I think you got a chance to stop this Utah offense. Getting into the pick here, this is so difficult, because I look at it and say that there are not a lot of teams that go on the road that play Utah and come away with a win. But I look at Texas Tech and say, I'm going to go with them. And I'm going to go with Texas Tech to go on the road and outright win this one, because I think they got the guys to slow down this Utah rushing attack. They're really good on the defensive line. They got some really good linebackers who can fly around the football and go make plays. If you can slow down this Utah rushing attack, which is easier said than done, I'll certainly admit that. But if you can slow it down, create some negative plays, get Utah behind the chains, I think you can live with that and say, hey, Devon Dampier, can you go beat us as a pocket passer? And then I look at Texas Tech on offense and say, I don't think they're going to move the football all up and down this football team, but I think they got the chance to score points because of how multidimensional they are. Am I super confident taking Texas Tech to go on the road and beat Utah? No, absolutely not. This game certainly could go either way, but I'm going to lean Texas Tech because I think they have the ability, like not a lot of other teams in the Big 12, to deal with this Utah rushing attack. And I think they have the ability to block Utah's pass rush up as well. We'll see how it turns out. Going to be a really, really fun football game. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.